on. And joining us now is Dr. Chad Hanson. He is a California wildfire scientist and a forest and fire ecologist with the John Muir Project. He's also the author of Smokescreen, Debunking Wildfire Myths to Save Our Forests and Our Climate. Chad, great to be with you today. And really, we're praying for all of you out there in California. Tell us what the situation is right now, and do we know yet how they started?
As far as I know, the cause is still unknown. If they do know, it hasn't been disclosed. But the main situation right now is as it has been, for the past day, which is very, very dry air, dry conditions. We haven't had much rain, and extreme winds in this very, very heavy Santa Ana wind event. And so it's a combination of circumstances that puts communities at significant risk, especially when these fires are so close to communities, and they've already directly impacted hundreds and hundreds of homes already. At least over 1,000 structures have been destroyed already at last count.
Yeah, it really is devastating. Chad, tell us about the winds in particular and how that's making this just that much more dangerous.
Well, the winds are the big factors in wildfires. The wildfires are fundamentally weather and climate events. We need to think of them like we think of hurricanes. And that's the problem is in the past, in the 20th century in particular, we thought about fires as something that were in our control. We could stop them. We could stop them with fire suppression tactics. We could stop them by removing trees or shrubs from remote wildlands, and somehow that would stop a fire. The reality is that they're driven by the wind, and if the temperature is right and you've got dry air and heavy wind and an ignition, the fire is going to spread, and oftentimes spread very quickly if you've got those heavy winds. And that's what we have here, and that's why we've seen such massive home losses.
Hard to look at too, these images that we're seeing here on the screen. I know the wildfire season in California typically runs from about June to October, but we did see a wildfire in the Golden State in December, and now these destructive wildfires. Chad, how unusual is it to see these wildfires this time of year there and of this magnitude?
Yeah, it's true. In wildfire season generally in California is June through September. But in Southern California, it's an exception, mostly because of the Santa Ana wind events. Is this meteorological phenomenon unique to Southern California? It typically happens in the fall and also early winter, even as we're seeing now. And it's characterized by dry conditions and extreme wind, and that is what drives the flames more than anything else. And the reality is that when you've got these really dry conditions like this, dry air, dry ground, and you've got these heavy winds, you can't stop those fires. It's not possible for fire suppression forces to stop them. And it's not realistic of us as a society to expect them to, or it's not fair. What they can do is help people safely evacuate. And they've been doing that very, very successfully. And kudos to them for that, because they've been prioritizing that, and that was the right thing to do here.
Yeah, certainly. Another thing I want to touch on too is all the smoke from these wildfires. Can we talk about that and how that's impacting the air quality and also the potential health risks for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when people are this close to that kind of a concentration of smoke because the fire is so close, it can really be a significant risk to people, especially who are in sensitive categories. People with chronic respiratory problems. That they can really be impacted, seriously by that kind of smoke. So it's important for people to take whatever measures they can to protect themselves. But of course, priority one is to get people out of harm's way, and that's what first responders have been focusing on, because again, you can't stop a fire that's being driven by 60, 70, 80-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, and what do you think, Chad, about the response from first responders to these fires?
I think they've been doing an outstanding job. They've been recognizing what they can do and recognizing what it's not possible, and so they've been focusing on community protection, public safety. Number one, making sure people and whenever possible their animals, get out safely. And then when they've done that, then they do structure protection as a secondary issue to try to save the homes, doing last minute things, spraying water on homes, clearing dry grasses around homes, doing those basic things that can make a difference in a pinch. But their main focus is on basically making sure people get out safely, both firefighters and law enforcement working together to do this. And that's really where we need to move to. We've been moving more and more that way in terms of fire responses, and that's a good thing because there's no higher priority than making sure people get out safely.
Absolutely. We're praying for everyone. Chad, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.